Okay, everybody, welcome to Woolgard Geomatics College. Woolgard Geomatics College is a nonprofit collaboration of individuals donating their time, resources, experience, and knowledge for the betterment of the land surveying profession. The college is not affiliated with any professional association, other college, university, or business. Woolgard Geomatics College is an informal gathering of interested land surveyors, articling pupils, and others interested in the geomatics field. The goal is to participate in open discussion on various topics with invited guest presenters that can lend their expertise and knowledge to the discussion. The gatherings are intended to be broaden the education and knowledge of students and surveyors alike in different areas of practice for the betterment of the profession. Woolgard Geomatics College is live online from September to March on Wednesdays at 4:30 to 6:30 Mountain Time. So today our financial contributors to Eclipse to Woolgard Geomatics College is Rob Pinkerton, and I'd like to thank Rob for his contribution. And if you would like to see your name or company up here, just make a donation. You can do an e-transfer to Woolgard Geomatics College at gmail.com. And that is in the bottom right-hand corner. Or you can make a check out to Woolgard Geomatics College at Centerline Geomatics, Bay 140, 2730, 3rd Avenue Northeast, Calgary, Alberta, T2A 2L5. So the best way to do it is through an e-transfer. You and your friends can now subscribe to the college's electronic weekly mailouts in just 3 easy steps. Step 1, request a friend to provide you with an electronic version of the weekly mailout. And if you go to the bottom of the page, it says step 2, click on the sign up for the newsletter. And when you do that, you can enter your name and your email address, and you'll automatically be added to the list and you'll get the weekly mailouts. So the disclaimer, all of the views conveyed in this presentation are those of the presenter. The profession of land surveying has regional quirks and specifications. The material in this presentation is not intended to be specific to any particular jurisdiction, but rather be a general discussion of concepts. So today's hot topic is hybrid cadastre surveys. And our presenter today is Mr. Reid Egger, ALS, CLS, BCLS, NP, PSERV, and PEng. Prior to working in the Director of Surveys office for 6 years, Reid had spent several years in the field surveying from high level to many varies, followed by a decade managing survey projects mostly in the oil and gas industry on private and public lands in Alberta and the Northeast BC. In his time at the Director of Surveys office, he endeavored to bring the voice of the practical reason to the table when coordinating and advising both AER and the Public Land Disposition Management section of AEP. He is now happily detached from all of that and enjoying managing legal survey projects across the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. He has extensive knowledge of the public lands disposition process, the hybrid cadastre, compiled plans, and disposition plan standards, at least until they change it all again. In his presentation, Public Land Dispositions, he will try to pass on some of his insights into the big black box of AEP and AER, and hopefully point you in the right direction to learn far more than can be squeezed into a couple of hours. Okay, Reid, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for the presentation. And I'm going to turn off my mic and my camera, and I'll let you take it away.
Okay, I guess I should have updated my the intro there, because it's actually on hybrid, not on dispositions in general. Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk about hybrid cadastre surveys. If you attended my presentation on dispositions a couple of weeks ago, you can relax a little. This won't be nearly the same pace. This year I'm going to deviate from what I have done in the past. This won't be a how to survey hybrid lecture, or even a how do you think you would do it type of workshop. I'll get Erwin and or
Brian?
What's that? Oh, Brian. Yeah, sorry. Lost it for a second. I'll get Erwin or Brian to keep an eye on the chat, just because I don't have it up on the screen there. So I'll take breaks in between sections if you want to ask questions. So, okay. So the angle I'm going to take this year is going to focus on principles and concepts, hybrid plan standards, practice standards, and resources. Now the hybrid cadastre is an established method of surveying on public lands and preparing disposition plans. And in fact, in the near future, may be the foundation for surveys on private lands in Alberta as well. So, gone are the days of the prescriptive rules of how to perform a hybrid survey and how to prepare a plan, or so I hope. So firstly, the principles and concepts. But first, I'm going to demonstrate on a bit of background on how we got to where we are. In 2004, there was a move towards mapping dispositions more accurately. Some of you may remember the old pencil crayon disposition plats on the township plans back then, and then the shift towards DIDS mapping from around that period. In 2008, there was a push by the director of surveys at the time to improve the quality of surveys, and particularly the monumentation. There was immediate pushback from industry over the increase of cost of surveys, particularly for license of occupation, access roads, basically. In 2010, the Minister of SRD, who's the predecessor of AEP, got up and made a public promise to industry, the forest industry in particular, of GPS location plans where anybody could create a boundary of a interest on public land. Needless to say, the ALSA thought that was odd, and they filed injunctions of unauthorized practice against several non-land surveyors for preparing these plans. After some consultation with industry in 2013, the hybrid cadastre pilot project started as a replacement for these GPS location plans. So during the pilot project, there were 3 versions of the guidelines and several memos that came out. The rules were relatively loose, but there was a general improvement, a gradual improvement in the plan quality. At the time, it seemed like a good idea, but it did result in quite a few plan rejections, often for what seemed like trivial or irrelevant things. The pilot was completed on March 31st, 2016, right before the ALSA Standards Committee was planning to introduce recommendations for hybrid practice standards in the MSP. So when the pilot project finished, version 1 of the hybrid cadastre standards was released on April Fool's Day 2016. It superseded the manual standard practice and introduced a prescriptive intersection rule based on the assumption that all land surveys in Alberta are required to follow section 45.3 of the Surveys Act. It was impractical and dysfunctional and was completely uneconomical for surveying LOCs, the very reason it was brought in to address this. Don't blame me, this came out 3 weeks before I started working for the government. So in that fall, myself and another member of the Director of Surveys Office did a traveling workshop which seemed to help raise awareness and the comfort level in hybrid plans. And then in July 2017, as a result of a joint ALSA Director of Surveys Working Group, version 2.0 was released. And while it added some FAQs and a suggested checklist to the standards, it was still very prescriptive. It didn't really change the standards very much in itself. So more recently, there were 3 versions that were released in fairly quick succession. Version 2.1, released in November 2019, had only one significant change, that intersections would be done in accordance with the manual standard practice. As soon as I was able to get that changed, we quickly published it before anybody changed their minds on that. It did partially drop the 2 georeference point rule, but that was intended to be included in the next version. So a year later, we finished removing the 2 RP rule. I quietly removed the statement in the hybrid cadastre standards that says it supersedes the MSP, and the rest of it were just little RPR, red tape reduction changes that don't really affect how hybrid surveys were performed. On the other hand, version 3.0 was released in 2021 as a result of extensive, meaningful consultation with land surveyors who perform surveys on public lands. It addressed many of the known pinch points and was a major shift in concepts that to make hybrid surveys both practical and functional. So before I left the Director of Surveys office, I extensively helped make a new draft version of the Public Land Survey Manual that has a section on the principles and concepts of the hybrid cadastre. These are completely copy and paste straight out of the hybrid cadastre standards, which is still around, is still the governing document there. But it's anything we put in the public land, this draft public land survey manual, it's not rules, it's not standards, it's not it's not practice standards, it's not plan standards, it's just the ideas behind the hybrid cadastre. So in sections 1.1 and 1.2 of the hybrid cadastre standards, we mention these bullets. And I'm not going to read them verbatim because you can read them either here or currently in the hybrid cadastre standards. It also, from section 2 of the standards, it also includes the definitions of what an EC is, an XC, an RC, and an OC. As well,
Hello?
it has some concepts from the section 3.1 of the hybrid cadastre standards, just the monuments, like I said, basic concepts. Monuments and coordinates coexist. Either a coordinate or a physical monument can govern a position, but not both. A coordinate is deemed to be equivalent of a statutory iron post, and ECs can't be lost, but can lose their governing status. As well, we copied and pasted the relationships in section 3.2. That a new boundary is created using new and existing ECs, RCs, and physical monuments and combinations. OCs cannot replace existing monuments. RCs, derived from lost monuments, cannot alter the existing location. If a new boundary intersects or is coincident with existing boundaries, subsequent ECs can't alter that boundary. RCs have the equivalent weight of a reestablished monument, and any practicing ALS can replace an EC with an iron post. And if doing so, the post will govern as long as it complies with accuracy requirements. Like I said, no new concepts here. Just we move. Before I left, I helped to move them over. As well, existing non-hybrid and new hybrid curves. Existing non-hybrid curves are defined in a traditional way with the BC and the EC and the radius governing and the curve orientation governing, and then all of the parameters calculated from this. And that the curve center does not need to be calculated, as it doesn't define that curve. And then with new hybrid curves based on the current standards, again, they're established by coordinates or combination of physical monuments. The term BC and EC aren't used in this context, but to avoid confusion. You have to have 3 curve defining points on the curve defining points. They may be either 3 PCs or 3 points on the curve, or 2 points on the curve and the curve center. Any of these can be any type of coordinate. Note that the points on curve and the curve center aren't point types. They're merely the attributes of a point. And if the curve center is used as one of the curve defining points, then 2 PCs are required. I think I said this already. So any other points on the curve, don't constrain that, as long as you have those 3 that you pick and show as the curve defining points. The others are just points that happen to be on the curve. And the curve dimensions shown on the plan don't govern. They're just for information purposes, similar to the bearings and distances. As well, from section 6 of the hybrid cadastre standards, we included in the PLSM the georeferencing requirement, georeferencing concepts, that any OC can be used as an RP. Hybrid plans do need to be georeferenced in the same manner of other survey plans, with some restrictions, specifically that they can't be georeferenced to ATS 4.1. And then this is the only datum that can be used for them. So at the same time that we were amending the Public Land Survey Manual to include hybrid concepts and principles, I was helping the Public Lands Disposition Management's Geomatics Unit migrate hybrid plan standards into their content requirements. While the draft content requirements that has not yet been published, or while it hasn't been published, the plan examiners and the auditors at AER are applying the bullets, the hybrid bullets that we put into this draft content requirements, and they shouldn't be applying anything that isn't in those bullets. Most of these plan standards are in Section 5 of the Hybrid Cadastre Standards. So what we put into that document is three subsections: a title block on what is required to be shown in the title block, which is the standard statement of plan showing survey of etc. is stated. The 4 standard bullets that you should see on any hybrid plan. The standard abbreviations that are in the currently in the Hybrid Cadastre Standards should be used. And then in the table of coordinates, for the point numbers, the point numbers should be listed incrementally, commencing from number 1. No missing numbers or inserts. The northern and easting columns are stated, rounded to 2 decimal places, no spaces, no commas. Trust me, that it makes it really hard to extract the data if you put spaces or commas in the coordinates.
Hey, Reid, sorry to jump in here.
Go ahead.
We do have a question from Tim. Why is Epoch 2002 used rather than 2010?
Because we haven't switched for the purpose of hybrid. If the I don't have a good answer for that. You'd have to ask Jeff Bannum with the Director of Surveys office, because he's the one who has stuck with that one for now. But it's not that he isn't aware of that and may advise switching over sometime. Okay, thanks everyone, and thanks Tim for the question. So the column in the table of coordinates that has your coordinate type, you have to show one of those 4 types of coordinates, or you should show it. Then in the point description column, it's open. It's quite open. It's not prescriptive. You can say what you want to say and say what you need to say, as long as it correctly describes the point and doesn't contradict the plan. If your table says it's a found spike, but your plan shows its point is a establishment coordinate, then it's wrong. There's no denying that part. But other than that, it's open to say what you need to say in that column. It should include the applicable attributes, such as whether it's an RP, a point on curve, or a curve center. And in the case of XCs, existing establishment coordinates, you use the point number that corresponds to your point number in the sequencing of your plan. The northings and eastings have to be exactly the same as the plan that created it. Otherwise, you're creating a plan or a boundary uncertainty. And you have to uniquely cross-reference it in the description field. It doesn't say exactly what order you have to put things in that description field, just that it has to be unique. The way I would do it would be, I'd say point number 1 from LOC such and, well, sorry, PLA such and such, plan such and such, version, basically using the information from the plan stamp on the margin of the plan. So that's in the table of coordinates. What about on the body of the plan? The things that the examiners are looking for there. That the point numbers are drawn with an ellipse. This isn't, this is a should, not a must, by the way. It shouldn't get rejected if it's an oval now anymore. The points should flow in an ascending order in a logical sequence, starting with the RP or RPs, if you want to use more than one. All the points along the new boundary in a logical sequence, and then the other points on the boundary in a logical sequence. The way I used to advise surveyors to do it for numbering is don't make the examiner hunt for the next point every time. If they have to hunt for that, they get grumpy and they're more likely to find rejection. So keep them happy, keep it easy to find all your next points in sequence. The natural boundaries, not all the OCs need to be labeled, but they have to be in the table. No calculated or temporary points on the plan. That's what ECs are for. And then we also have some plan standards for existing and new hybrid curves. In the table of coordinates, you show the point number, northings and eastings, point type, and description of the point. This is for existing non-hybrid curves. Yeah, point number, northing, eastings, point type, and description of points at the beginning and then the end of the curve. On the body of the plan, you show the point numbers, symbols, and or the portion, all the points on the curve or the portion that is being used. And you dimension it with the radius, delta angle, and arc length as you would on any other plan. If you're showing a new hybrid curve in the table of coordinates, you show the point number, northing and easting coordinate type, and the descriptions for all the points on the curve and the curve center if applicable. For the 3 curve defining points, and only 3 of them, you should be labeling PC and or CC in the description field. Preferably at the beginning, but that's not prescriptive either. It's not critical. On the body of the plan for a new hybrid curve, you should show the point numbers and symbols for the 3 curve defining points and the dimensions with the radius, delta angle, and arc length again. So I'll take a pause here because I haven't taken a pause for questions yet. So Erwin, did you see anything?
No, Brian just put a publication there that just shows what every province uses for epochs. He put that as likely why. I'm not sure if Brian wants to explain that.
Yeah, that's going to be Jeff Banham's explanation. Is he's going to say, well, this is just what the feds are saying for epochs. I mean, Blue Moon Island is still at 1997. So Alberta's at 2002. I'm sure we'll figure it all out. We'll all be 2020 together or something.
Okay. So you may have noted none of the hybrid plan standards in the last section restrict how a surveyor performs a survey within their professional judgment. All those plan standards do is say how to show it on the plan. So there's a working group at the standards committee looking to see what practice standards should be moved from the hybrid cadastre standards to the manual standard practice, and what good to know material can be moved to the essential resource document. Yeah, they're working on this with the Director of Surveys Office to draft recommendations for the 2023 AGM. So currently, in the Manual of Standard Practice in Part C, Section 7, there's it's a small section that covers what's currently hybrid practice standards. You know, there's a preamble that basically says you may prepare a hybrid plan at your discretion, but you need to be aware of the AEP documentation, and that will probably change wording in the preamble. Then it has a section on what to do if you're doing a hybrid plan and you're dealing with somebody else's hybrid plan, as well as a section that relates to where the hybrid cadastre standards say intersections are to be done in accordance with the MSP. Well, this is the subsection of the MSP that it's referring to right now. So as well, currently there are a number of there's a number of hybrid practice standards that are currently in the hybrid cadastre standards. I'm going to go through a few of those that will likely end up in the MSP, I think, before too long. You know, but they'll continue to, the hybrid cadastre standards will continue to be in effect until all the practice standards are in here. So they can, in Section 3 of the hybrid cadastre standards, it's expected that standard practice for posting right-of-ways for linear dispositions. In other words, typically these aren't surveyed on an offset line, they're surveyed on the actual boundary. As well, Part 2 locations require posting, and ECs and RCs are only allowed if unsuitable for posting. Part 3 locations can be reestablished with an RC, but due diligence has to be exercised when accepting RCs or accepting the coordinates of someone else's XCs, and they have to be the same as the plan that created it. And for natural boundaries, you put an EC at the intersection of the rectilinear boundary with the bank, but this doesn't fix that natural boundary. It only describes basically it shows you the direction that rectilinear boundary goes until it hits the current bank. And also for natural boundaries, there's, other than those two intersections, you show OCs along that bank. So from Section 4 of the hybrid cadastre standards, Section 4 is where the accuracy standards for hybrid are, and these are likely to move to Part B, I think Section 1 of the MSP, but they're not there yet. In Section 5 of the hybrid cadastre standards, in terms of practice standards, there's the issue of corner cuts on how to deal with them, as well as anchor boxes on EZEs. As well, the fact that under the hybrid cadastre standards, new iron spikes on I-bars aren't permitted. As well, from Section 6 of the hybrid cadastre standards, there's the georeferencing requirement of having to have one RP, and that it must be found or placed, statutory iron post, standard post, found I-bar, or ASCM. In addition to that, you have to have two OCs that have to be within 10 kilometers of all coordinates or coordinated positions. So that's the practice standards that are currently in the hybrid cadastre standards, but are being discussed to be moved or maybe changed. I'm not in that working group, happily, actually, and so I'll find out. I am on the standards committee, so I'll find out what that working group is planning on putting into there, but I'm quite interested in seeing what they come up with. So resources. Currently, there's a number of resources for hybrid that are on the AEP website. You know, the content requirements for survey plans and sketches. The version 3.1, like I said, there's a draft version or draft version 3.1 that I'm told is supposed to be getting published soon, knock on wood, unless it gets log jammed someplace along the way. But the director of public lands has I've heard he has said he does want to publish it soon. So in that, you'll see within that document, you'll see the plan standards. Similarly, the public land survey manual, there's a current version out right now. And there's as I mentioned, there's a draft version that includes hybrid concepts and principles. The director of surveys has expressed that he plans to publish this shortly after the draft version of the content requirements gets published. So at that point, the hybrid cadastre standards will still be around, but some of the information will be repeated in these two documents. So things that could be included in the essential resource document that's currently on the AEP website is the sample plans, the frequently asked questions, and the checklist. Actually, before I say that, these wouldn't have to necessarily be, these wouldn't have to wait to an AGM to migrate from the AEP's website to the essential resource document. The way the ERD was set up is that updates could be made as required through the year. So if we as members were to accept all the hybrid practice standards in the MSP at next AGM, then the hybrid cadastre standards could be rescinded. And the director of surveys has expressed the interest in rescinding this once all the information that's necessary, that's still pertinent, has been migrated to another document other than the hybrid cadastre standards. So there's my presentation. I can see the chat now myself. Now they've got that screen open. So if anybody has any questions, I'm open to.
Do we have any questions for Reid? He's your expert.
For now.
Reid, just a personal question. Well, sort of. Where do you see any more advancements in the hybrid, or anything that was potentially discussed on what other improvements or things that they may be looking at?
Well, something that when we're in consultation about with the for version 3.0, I did throw one idea out there that they may not have been ready for, and that is the idea that right now an EC is deemed to be equivalent to a statutory iron post. So the good example, if you were to survey an LOC or an MSL conventionally, you'd use no monument, or you would use, or for the LOC, you could just use centerline observations with no monument, or for an MSL you'd use spikes, which don't have the same survey requirements that a statutory iron post has, particularly in terms of intersections. If one direction that you could go, and I threw this out there just as an idea, that if instead of it being equivalent to a statutory iron post, it were deemed to be equivalent to the monument type in the PLAR tables for that disposition type at the time of survey, that would make it more, because right now I wouldn't use a hybrid plan for a LOC or a DLO myself, because it's even now it's still not quite as efficient as doing it in accordance to Part C, Section 6.2 and 3 of the MSP. I had to pull that out of my memory, having changed recently. So if you were to do that, if they were to do that, if the membership were to decide that, then, because it being a practice standard, then maybe the hybrid cadastre could be used efficiently for pretty much any disposition plan.
So Reid, can you see where your system or this system at the Director of Surveys office could be extended to subdivisions, land development in survey territory?
Well, the amendments to the Surveys Act last spring already made allowances for authoritative coordinates in the Act in Land Title Act plans for titled land. So I think there is a working group that is working with the Director of Surveys on the regulations that would allow for this to happen, and I'm not on that, but I'm fairly confident that they're using a lot of the lessons learned from hybrid to develop these regs, and from that practices. And
yeah, because it would make life a lot simpler if they would use the same standards for both systems, right?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Do we have any more questions for Reid? So no more questions? Come on, everybody. This is your last chance for Reid. Anyways, I'll let them think about it. Next week, on the 28th of September, we have well sites and pipeline surveys. So stay tuned next week for well sites and pipelines. And seeing no more questions for Reid, I'd like to thank Reid for his presentation today on hybrid cadastre surveys. And thanks everybody for tuning in to Woolgard Geomatics College, and we'll see you all next week at 4:30 Mountain Time. So take care and have a good week. Talk to you later. Goodbye.